Hey everyone, we're gonna take about 2 minutes to get started and let everyone settle in. Welcome to the Mobile UX Marathon. If you would just wanna type in the chat box and tell us where you're from and maybe a fun fact about you. I'm Nikki, I'm from Detroit, so if anyone else is from Detroit, let us know and we will get started soon. Hey guys, we're gonna get started at 2:05, but it looks like we have a Red Wings fan. I see people from LA and Istanbul and all over, so we're super excited that everyone's joining in from different parts of the world. Okay, hello and welcome to the Mobile UX Marathon, a series of weekly webinars on how to improve user experience and conversion rate on mobile web. Thank you for running the marathon with us and thank you for joining today. It is our fourth webinar of the series, and today we are going to talk about UX insights in Google Analytics and measuring success. I would like to introduce myself and our great speakers. So my name is Nikki Plina. I'm from New York, or I work in New York now. I am a technical specialist for mobile UX and work closely on providing deep data analytics insights to our clients to better inform their UX design changes. We also have Katarina Potter and Hadley Elsenbaumer on the phone, so I will let Kat introduce herself. Kat, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Katarina Potter. I'm a mobile specialist here at Google. I work in the healthcare vertical, and I help large healthcare or advertisers improve their mobile speed and user experience.
And my name's Hadley Elsenbaumer. I'm a measurement lead for our finance, travel, and healthcare clients here at Google. I work closely with our sales teams to support our clients with measuring their return on ad spend.
Awesome. So today's live stream will be approximately 1 hour, and we will cover a welcome back with a homework recap. And then we will talk through 3 website design paths. And then we'll get into creating a measurement plan, from defining goals to setting KPIs, and then finally aligning your teams to your measurement plan and strategy. And then last but not least, we have a case study on Shoe, which we're super excited to share with you today. And we'll leave it open for question and answer at the end. So please, as the live stream goes on, feel free to ask any questions into the chat, and we will make sure that we get to them at the end of this live stream. So if you're joining us for the first time, here's a quick recap of what Mobile UX Marathon is. It is a series of live streams across the globe focused on various UX topics. The marathon is going to be on for 6 weeks. It's a long distance run, and every week we are going to discuss a different UX topic. It is open to everyone. So that means marketers, UX practitioners, design and product teams and developers, maybe even your brother or sister who's thinking of getting into UX. Anyone looking to perform better on mobile web can run this marathon with us. Please register at the website to receive weekly communication from us, including feedback forms. And then here's a quick recap of what you need to do to get the most out of this series. First, watch the pre-recorded videos and take a look at the resources that we have prepared for you before each webinar. Second, please ask questions on the UX Marathon website or prepare them for the live stream. And then last, join the live stream sessions to get the answers. Every live stream will be approximately 1 hour. And then we will be sending out feedback forms after every live stream, so we would love to get feedback from you all. Speaking of feedback, based on the responses that we received from the last session, we wanted to present back what we are going to action on. The most popular responses we got were, you all liked the extended Q&A sessions, so we will aim to finish our content earlier in the webinar to leave it open for pre-submitted and live stream questions. And then second, we also received that viewers enjoyed our case studies, and today we are excited to share a case study on Shoe. Now I'm going to give a quick recap of the pre-recorded videos that hopefully you all watched as homework. A quick recap on the homework. I hope you were all able to watch the video by Nupur and Misha. It was an extremely interesting video where she walked us through Google Analytics and displayed how it can be an extremely powerful tool when making UX decisions. I personally believe that site analytics should always be consulted before making any UX changes. We went over 5 to 10 reports in the video with mobile segmentation that helped us deep dive into data and allowed us to get insights into the friction a user can feel navigating throughout experience on your mobile website. Some important reports that she went through were page scroll, audience reports, and industry benchmarks. We also looked at the enhanced e-commerce reports and the view it provides about leakages into site experience, which we definitely recommend using if you are an e-commerce site. Hopefully you learned a lot from this video, and we are going to talk more about how to make metrics centered around business goals and start measuring from there. We will also talk about how to evolve your team culture to be one of measurement first. Now I will hand it over to Kat to take us through the tale of 3 website designs.
Thanks so much, Nikki. So in order to illustrate the points that we're trying to make today best, I'm going to tell you the tale of the 3 websites. These are 3 fictional websites. However, these are all based on actual advertiser experiences that have undergone website redesigns to improve their performance. So the first website, we'll call it website number 1. Their old site was really, for the lack of a better word, ugly. It did not convey the sophisticated brand they are, and they hire an award-winning creative agency that promises to deliver the best website for the brand. Website number 2, They're a number-focused organization. Every decision needs to be backed by supporting stats. They choose to redesign their outdated site to improve the aesthetics and functionality of the site. And website number 3, this is a small team, and they're inheriting a site redesign that is already halfway done by a previous team that no longer works at the organization. So this lean team, they need to course correct and do it fast, but they cannot go back. So these are the 3 websites, the 3 types of teams that we're going to look at how they did. And as I am giving you the details of each one, I would love it if you can comment in which one you're identifying the most. So here's the first website. The creative director leads the redesign. They're making sure that the site follows all the brand guidelines, images from the latest photo shoot, custom fonts, all the things that the previous site didn't have. The site is responsive on mobile devices, and after many delays and changes in the scope, the new site launches after some light usability testing. The second site, the digital performance director leads the redesign. The creative team has come up with great new design that looks much more sophisticated than the old. But everything needs to be A/B tested until the new site outperforms the old site, and the results are shared on a regular basis among the stakeholders. Website number 3, like website number 2, the focus is on website performance. The team looks at the performance of the old site and tries to identify the strong and weak points. They set up criteria for success that are focused on improvement from the old site where the performance was lacking. They A/B test the key pages and they get feedback. Then they soft launch the site in a way that users can switch to the new version if they choose so. And they also do some user testing in addition to this. So I'm hoping that there are a lot of answers on how people, which website you identify with. So let's see how did these 3 websites fare in terms of results from the redesign. So website number 1, the launch goes pretty badly with many outages, bugs, and all the results of insufficient testing and data. Their site converts at half the rate compared to the old or ugly site. They try to look at their analytics data about what causes the bad performance, but their 2 sites are so different, it's hard to determine what specific elements cause the poor performance. The client is out of business within 6 months. All right, what do we think about website number 2? Well, the answer is we don't know. The new site outperforms the old site, but not on all pages. The client keeps testing the pages that don't perform until they do. And in the meantime, they need to maintain 2 separate sites that require double the resources. We still don't know whether this redesign is a success or a failure. And finally, website number 3, they soft launch the new site for a month by making it available to a % of the users. They look at analytics and conduct user testing to look for issues. They work to even out the performance of the old and the new site before the full launch. They stay within 2 weeks of the original launch date, which is great. Once they launch fully, they see an even performance. So not a huge difference between the old and the new site. They continue to improve the new site by improving different features, and performance improves gradually but consistently for the past 6 months. So Nikki, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So of these 3 stories, what can we see are the 3 main challenges of rethinking your UX measurement plans? The first is making sure that we're identifying the business outcomes or objectives that we care about for our customers. The second is to make sure that we are setting the right key performance indicators to measure those business outcomes. And the third is ensuring that our team or teams are aligned to deliver on those metrics and outcomes for our business. Let's start from the first one, figuring out your business outcomes. So why is setting goals and aligning metrics so important? In a Forrester study commissioned by Google of survey respondents identified as sophisticated marketers, 53% stated that they adhere to well-established metrics that tie directly to business goals or customer outcomes. These marketers support organizations that are at least 3 times more likely to hit their goals than other marketing organizations. Marketers who are winning at the growth game today because they do not base their analytics plans on measuring tools they have. They start with the outcomes their business wants to achieve, then determine the best way to measure for those goals. If there is a mismatch between your goals and your measurement KPIs, it hinders your ability to drive the results you really want. Now, let's walk through Nielsen-Norman's group's translating UX goals into analytics measurement plans to understand how to take our goals into measurable KPIs. Using Nielsen-Norman Group's translating UX goals into analytics measurement plans, we can clearly see how to take our business goals and translate them into metrics and KPIs within 4 easy steps. The first step is defining the goal of your UX project. Goals are big picture and focus on the customer or business goals. They do not include metrics and uniquely define the goal of a specific feature or design element that is in question. So, if your goal is to reduce bounce rate, that would not be a good goal because goals should not be metrics. Why do we care about bounce rate in the first place? Well, we care because we want our users to be engaged with our content on the product page. And ultimately, it would increase the likelihood of an add to cart, decrease bounce rate, and further down the line, hopefully increase conversion rate or average order value. So, if the goal is to ensure content is engaging on our product pages, this is a much more customer-centric goal. We are able to align metrics and KPIs to gauge this goal's effectiveness, but the goal itself is not a metric. Other examples of goals would be ensure users can easily sign up for our service through perhaps a more prominent CTA, testing different colors, or shortening the forms for sign up. Another example of the goal would be ensure users are aware of our new sale. And you could do that through the UX changes like better messaging on the homepage or prominent value propositions throughout the site. But you would notice that both of these goals are not metrics themselves, but can be aligned to specific metrics to measure their success. Step 2 is define behavioral cues that will allow the team to understand if the goal is being met. These can be any action that a user might take on your site or page. You can see here that we have paired our goal with 6 behavioral cues that will allow us to understand if we are closer or further away from reaching our goals, depending if these cues increase or decrease. These cues may include items like zoom in on photo, scroll to the bottom of the page, or if a user has remained on that page for 10 seconds. These are all indicators that content is engaging for our users. Now, remember, we have not yet paired a specific metric with these behavioral cues yet, and we will do so in the next few steps. The third step is narrow down signals. In order to make our measurement plans simple, you'll want to focus on only the most important interactions. In step 3, we narrow down the signals. You can select these signals by ease of implementation. For example, maybe you already have an event tracking zoomed in on photo, so you choose zoomed in on photo as one of your signals. Maybe the team has decided that the behavioral cue with the highest value is add to cart, so you will keep that one as well. Remember, you want to focus on only the strongest signals. Now, let's finalize our measurement plan with specifying KPIs. Last, we define metrics and tracking methods for each of the behavioral cues we have selected in step 4, define metrics and tracking. You can see here that the behavioral cue, interacted with at least one piece of content before leaving the page, has translated into tracking decrease in bounce rate on the right side of the page. We will track this using the out-of-the-box Google Analytics functionality. For others, we may need to install a new tool such as heat mapping to ensure our users are getting to the bottom of the page in in metric 2. We also will have to do some tagging of events for behavioral cues 1 and 3 in order to understand when a user zoomed in on a photo or clicked on our Add to Cart button. Through this exercise, the team will have a greater understanding on what work is required to implement a new feature and what measurement will look like post-implementation. The final piece to creating a measurement plan is, of course, using it and implementing it into the team's culture. There are 3 ways to do that. The first is enforcing measurement tracking and aligning teams to specific KPIs. You want event tracking to be a part of the development process. A development project can only be considered as complete if the team has implemented the correct analytics tracking in order to measure success. That means you do not push any large feature to production unless you can correctly track results. Report often to increase visibility. By setting targets for each metric for a new feature and sending out reports to the team via email, dashboard, or alerts, you will certainly circulate awareness on how a new feature is affecting user behaviors. It is important to track larger site-wide KPIs such as speed, conversion rate, and time on site, so all relevant parties are aware of site success, not just the development teams. Finally, we will use data insights to inform future changes. The more data we collect on our users and the more features we measure, the more successful we will be in the future. Reviewing the results of the UX changes regularly with cross-functional teams will better prepare us to make smarter UX changes in the future. So here we have an example of a client's organization is broadly aligned on the importance of performance. This can also be on the importance of other site KPIs such as time on site, average order value, or conversion rate. This client specifically is aligned on the importance of performance. But every time teams at this client implement performance optimizations, they often saw incremental regressions over time, and the pages become slower again. It was often unclear how to balance feature work against performance tech debt work. This motivated them to create a performance budgeting system, a framework in place that would prevent regressions and help teams balance feature work against performance and technical debt work. When the client first rolled out their performance portal, it didn't see much traffic. To create a performance culture, they knew they had to make it easy for employees to monitor performance in a way that was simple for everyone, beyond just engineers, to understand. After adding a simple stoplight performance indicator to all pages when viewed on an internal network, they saw a 50% increase in traffic each month. Now, over 25% of employees are monthly active users. Of all of the optimizations they've made, when asked what the single most effective tactic in improving performance, they said it was socializing the budget and making it ridiculously available. Now, this is an important tool for speed, but it can also provide site-wide metrics such as conversion rate, time on site, bounce rate, and average order value. If numbers dip below a certain level, then we can make sure we are checking on different areas of the site to ensure that a new feature or functionality is not upsetting the user journey. In a similar example, we can use reporting and dashboarding to inform our users. This client used Data Studio dashboards to inform their teams of their score on all of their landing pages. They showed trends and spread the information widely throughout the organization. This is another way to promote a culture of measurement and to continue to use metrics. Now I will pass it over to Kat to explore a case study.
Thanks, Nikki. So this is the story of Shoe. For those of you that are not familiar, Shoe is a high-end sports shoe retailer based in Dublin. There's a great video that their deputy head of e-commerce, Stuart McMillan, presented at last year's Conversions at Google conference, and I recommend you check it out. But in the meantime, I'm going to try to give you a quick synopsis of the case study. So the e-commerce team at Shoe started hearing from their buyers and brand teams that their website wasn't cool. And in their line of business, their perception actually matters, not just to their customers, but also to the brands that they sell. Brands decide which model of shoes they get to sell, depending on how, the perception of the brand, how cool they are to the target audience. And then also their main competitor redesigned their website. So a redesign for Shoe was inevitable. At the time, the team was already in the midst of planning a re-platform and moving to HTTPS, among other projects. So it's a lot of projects that happened at the same time. It took the team 20 months to complete the redesign, and the end result, as Stuart puts it, is they ended up with a white version of the same site. But we're going to talk a little bit about the process that they went through and the some of the lessons that they learned. So the primary success metric was conversion rate. And the conversion rate must not be lower than the current conversion rate. So this was their main goal. They also set some secondary success metrics like bounce rate and page speed. They also, very importantly, set up a reporting on the KPI, and they reported daily on the conversion rate and a few key other KPIs. And then they reported at the end for some of their secondary KPIs. They shared this reporting with the main stakeholders, and they created a culture where the team was invested in the KPI as the project progressed. There was a lot of A/B testing, user testing. They did weekly tests with small percentage of traffic, and then increasing it slowly if nothing was terribly wrong. Internally, everyone was hyping up the new website. The developer team could not fail. A lot was riding on this website relaunch, and they put together a plan for implementation. And as the testing went on, they reported it, like I said, on a daily basis. This is what the stakeholders were asking. Within an hour or two of the tests going live, a director called and said, "How's the conversion rate with the new design?" So the initial results, of course, were messy, and because everyone knew them, they started asking for all sorts of analysis. The team ended up in analysis paralysis. They had set up a poor communication strategy for their redesign and thinking they were being generous by being so transparent. So when they faced this challenge, of everybody coming in and asking lots of questions of something that was not really ready for prime time yet, they decided to take a different approach. They looked at Google Analytics of the two sites, and then they did a lot of remote user testing to zero in on what the issues were. And once they had a short list of issues, they went back into Google Analytics. They found that fewer people were using the search functionality because of a design issue. So this was one of the issues that they found, and they fixed it and tested again. But this time they changed how they were communicating. And of the overall redesign, the result was no difference between the old and the new site. And based on their KPI that they set out at the beginning of the redesign, this was actually a success. They did not change the conversion rate from the old to the new site. So there were some lessons learned, of course, and Stuart shares them really nicely in the video, but I'm going to try to repeat them for you. First one is don't freak out. So when he got a lot of questions and the tests were not ready, there was a lot of pressure on him, and he had to take a pause, had to take a break to make sure that he rethought what the problem was, and the problem was in the communication. His second lesson is to agree on KPI beforehand, and that they did, and they did pretty well. But then stick to your knowledge of CRO and don't overshare. So when they started asking about it every time, so for example, his boss would come and say, I need to know this stat, but maybe he didn't need to know, he wanted to know. And that's a major distinction. And language and presentation matter. So when you're using red and green, they're very strong colors in the presentation, and they indicate something going badly or going well. But a 0.3, if you see that a 0.3 of the conversion rate is down, that's not a statistically significant result. And it may mean that it's just flat, it's not down. But if it looks red, then it gets interpreted as something that's negative. And then we are all tempted to start peeking at the tests as soon as they go live and try to make some conclusions out of it. And we need to resist that temptation until we have enough data. I hope this case study helps out some of you as you're going through different projects. And next, I believe we'll be going into our Q&A session.
Hey guys, I'm going to be asking Hadley and Kat some of the questions that were pre-submitted prior to this webinar. But if you have questions regarding Google Analytics, how do you measure UX design changes and measuring success, please feel free to type that into the chat and we will try to answer as we go through. So the first question that was submitted was, when you notice a high bounce rate on a site, how can you determine if it is a design or marketing problem? When I see a high bounce rate on the landing page, I've gathered from Google Analytics that it's because of trust issues. So my coworkers work on branding and working with influencers to convert traffic. It worked, but how can one differentiate whether low engagement on the site has to do with the user experience or the marketing?
Yeah, so I can jump in and answer. This is Hadley. Google Analytics is really a great tool to help figure this out. What I would do here is create segments for desktop and mobile. And when you compare the two, you can see if there's a high bounce rate on mobile but lower on desktop. This should always be a red flag that there may be a design issue or that the user experience may be worse on mobile. I would say start by looking at the landing pages report. You can find it under the behavior section of Google Analytics if you're familiar with the tool. And if you see any landing pages where bounce rate is much higher on mobile, I would go and start to investigate that page specifically. You can do this by looking at specific conversion goals or events that you have set up and identify at which point specifically users are bouncing. So there might be a button that isn't working or isn't fully visible on mobile. The form could be really hard to complete, and you might be using your losers at that point. So you can, like I said, use GA kind of as a starting point and then go from there.
Awesome. So the next question we got was, how do you find the balance of luring users to do what you want versus fulfilling what users truly desire? So how do you distinguish if you should make your site force the user to do what you want or do what the users truly desire? And I'm going to give that one to Kat.
Thanks. So one of our main principles as a company is follow the user and everything else will follow. So I really don't recommend luring your users in any way, because you will end up with a bad experience. They will end up not liking what they're going through. Being open and honest with your users is the best policy, and giving them what they want as quickly as possible, as well as possible, is the best outcome that can come out of it for everybody that's involved. If someone comes to your website, it should be a mutually beneficial interaction. And if you're selling something, you should inspire them to buy. If you want more subscribers, create content that will make them want to subscribe. Users quickly catch on when they're being manipulated and they leave. So we do a lot of work on helping websites become faster, because we know that when we list slow websites on our in our search results and users click on a link, they will get a bad experience out of it, and we don't want that for our users. So similarly, we share a lot of UX best practices so that users find what they want quickly on the site they have visited and be able to complete the task that they've set out to complete and be able to leave. So you don't want people coming to your site with false expectations and getting something else.
Yeah, I think that was a great question, because it definitely can be tempting to want to force your users to do something on your site, but it's actually counterintuitive, because users really will naturally just follow the way that they want to behave on your website. So the next question is, for a designer that isn't well versed in Google Analytics or analytics in general, how does one develop a better understanding? And I will give that to Hadley.
Yes. So we offer a lot of Google Analytics training. I would say a great place to start is with Google Analytics Academy. It's a great self-serve resource for anybody to start to get comfortable with GA. All you have to do is just go online, search for Google Analytics Academy. It'll probably be the first page that comes up, and you can start with the beginner courses. If you get really well versed with this, start to feel more comfortable, there's also advanced and power user courses as well, which can be really helpful. If you are a advertiser on this call and you have a Google account team, also feel free to reach out to them if you have specific questions about navigating the tool or understanding it. We do offer, like I said at the beginning, a lot of different Google Analytics training courses, so you might be able to hop in one of those at some point as well.
Cool. And then the next question is, how can we measure influence of mobile UI design on offline sales? And I will give that to Hadley again.
This is a tough one. This is really challenging, mainly because there are always a ton of other factors that could be influencing our offline sales rates. So if you want to truly test this, you'll need to basically set up a test and control group and then roll out specific changes to your test group. However, you need to make sure that you're keeping all other activity constant so that you're not contaminating your test group. So things like media spend or strategic changes or any other UI changes, product launches, these would all need to be kept constant for your test period if you really wanted to draw a causation to the UI changes. So this can be really tricky. So realistically, I know that's not something that a lot of folks can do. So what you should try to do instead of getting this perfect is focus on micro conversions versus offline conversions. So if you have some key indicators, talking about our measurement plan earlier, if you have some key indicators of users progressing in your journey, so for example, if they're viewing a specific website page or signing up for a newsletter, this may be an indication, or you know that this is kind of a step in the purchase funnel. You can tie these to specific UI changes, which might be a little bit easier to track than waiting for the offline sale to occur. So this is just one way to think about it if you don't have the ability to actually have a true test and control group.
Next, I'm going to ask Kat, who should lead a product analytics project and who should be accountable for the monitoring?
So every organization is set up differently, so it's really hard to give a universal answer. However, I think it should be a collaborative approach. You know, we have a lot of situations where there is an analytics team and there's a UX team, and the analytics team does look at the data and they know things, but do they talk to the UX team and tell them, hey, we have a problem here and we need to solve for that problem? So it's really about setting up a process where there's communication between the different teams. We see a lot of silos in organizations. So being deliberate and intentional, being rallied behind a goal of having a better website is what's going to determine what the best person is to lead the product analytics project. So it's not a product that it's very hard to learn. There's a lot of intuitive, and Hadley mentioned there's a lot of training. So it doesn't have to be a dedicated analytics person. It has to be somebody who cares, somebody who has the ability to drive change in the organization if change is needed, and somebody who is able to socialize the need for change and get the teams to do their part in improving that situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. The next question is, how do you go about building a data-driven culture? And I will hand that over to Hadley.
Yeah, I'll take that one. There are a number of steps to make this happen, and this also isn't something that will happen overnight. It takes time to shift your culture into being more data-driven focused. But the first step in this process would be more goal-driven in focus. So everyone should become more aligned with the critical goals or targets of the org. You want everyone to be on the same page. So start with a meeting and ensure that these key metrics and drivers guide that agenda. The second is more clarity and confidence. So when we have a variety of data sources, it can be challenging for employees and team members to know which numbers to use and which ones to trust. I think this is a common pitfall of many organizations. We even see it here at Google. Sometimes there's just a ton of different numbers and data sources out there. But when you start to build a shared dashboard for recurring meetings, you provide a single version of the truth that everyone can trust and become familiar with, and everybody knows to go to that one source. The third is increasing visibility into what's happening throughout the week or the month. Employees will be more empowered to act and not wait until the next meeting if they have that visibility between meetings and not just at the specific meetings where you're reviewing those metrics. And then the last step in this process is accountability. So by having a consistent data-driven agenda throughout meetings, presentations, and other group events, people can be held accountable for their decisions and responsibilities. Too often, people are manipulating the content to hide or divert attention away from poor performance. But when this information is shared in a dashboard, people are really forced to face those numbers and have those tough but really necessary conversations to move things forward. And again, this all helps and comes back to creating that more data-driven culture and approach to decision making.
Awesome. I liked your point on greater transparency, because I think everyone wants to be able to act on data if it looks like something's going wrong, but they don't always know where to get it or how to get it. So if they have it more available, they are more likely to act on it. Can you tell us more about user journeys that you see for key products like travel or finance? What role does mobile play in that journey, and how many digital touch points do you think are possible to occur before a conversion event? So that was a question that I'm going to give to Hadley again.
Yeah. So the user journey is definitely getting longer, and this is kind of twofold. One is that people are spending more time evaluating and researching their options. And part of this is because there are so many more options than there used to be. When we look at finance specifically, the average credit card researcher searches 9 times before applying. That's just searching. Of course, they could be going to tons of other sites as a result of that search. And we know that mobile is playing a big role in this journey, as about 50% of credit card applicants visited branded sites on their mobile device as part of their journey. When we look at the travel front, we're seeing a similar trend. The average hotel path to purchase has 45 touch points. That's a ton, but also when you think about it, that doesn't sound that crazy to me. I know personally, I spend a lot of time researching for whether it's a hotel, an Airbnb, VRBO. We spend a lot of time, and there's been an increase in this year over year as the share is more focused now on mobile than ever. So of course, this varies based on each individual business. So the good news is that we do have Google Analytics as a tool to help provide a look into what role mobile is playing in the customer journey. You can use Google Analytics to understand who's coming to your site, how they're getting there, and what they're doing. And you're able to view this data across multiple devices, so you can get a better idea of how seemingly unrelated touch points in sessions are actually connected. So for example, you might discover that one segment of users searches on a mobile device and purchases on a tablet within the same day, while another segment clicks on an ad on mobile, browses your site on desktop the next day, and then returns to make a purchase on a tablet a week later. There's cross-device reports that really help you connect data about different devices and activities from different sessions, so that you can actually get a better understanding of your users and what they do at each step of the conversion process from that initial contact until the long-term retention. And this can be really helpful to identify optimization opportunities, how to shift budget, and how to ultimately meet our user needs.
Awesome, thanks. I'm going to pull a question from the live chat. Ruby asked, how do you optimize UX and increase metrics in a highly regulated, from a legal regulation, environment when A/B testing is unlikely? Kat, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So yeah, that's a really good question. I think there are a couple of parts of that question. One is, yes, in a regulated environment, there may be a lot of constraints in the typical way that companies do A/B testing. However, there are elements that are probably safer to A/B test even in those environments, such as colors and placement of logos or of different elements on the page. That there shouldn't be a ton of regulation around that. I do know that there's a lot of regulation around the language that is used and other elements. And in those cases, I think there's one type of testing that is really gets overlooked a lot, and I think it works in many situations better than a live A/B testing, and that's the pre and post test. So having something, you do want to control for various factors such as seasonality or some other external factors coming into play, but really pre and post testing is also an available solution out there that when you have other constraints you can employ. And I don't know, Hadley, do you have any other ideas?
That all makes sense to me. I would definitely agree that there are still some elements, to your point, Kat, that you can test. We do have a bunch of our clients that are in more regulatory industries like pharma or healthcare. And it is a little bit more challenging, but I would say that there's still small things you can do, and Kat and other team members are really helpful in kind of brainstorming those ideas.
Yeah, and then I would just add too, if you have the ability to do some sort of usability testing, like using usertesting.com, or even pulling people in to do research groups. If A/B testing is not an option for you, there's a ton of other options for testing. You could also start taking customer surveys from your site for users who are willing to fill out a survey after their purchase or after they sign up. And maybe you can get more information on really what your users are looking for from there. So it doesn't all need to be A/B testing, but I would definitely encourage you to follow mobile best practices where you can, and then look for other forms of testing to mitigate that. And then the next question is, do we categorize the traffic types on the basis of location, age, gender, knowledge, etc., while designing for consistency in UX, or should it be a consistent audience because you're designing for consistency? And I will give that to Kat.
Thanks. So from a UX perspective, by creating these segments, it'll allow you to isolate that data and apply further dimensions or metrics to it. So also depending on your target group or potential new target client group you want to explore, it makes sense to segment your reports and to understand user behavior for those groups better. So one example could be if you see a pattern for specific countries. For example, it might make sense to localize your website a little bit better. It'll help you understand different users, but it is not recommended to create 15 different versions of the website just to make sure that you target every single user. Another segment that I think is very important, and I've seen it not done well by clients, is making sure that you're aware of which device types or which operating systems your audience is mostly coming to your website with. So there are certain businesses where iOS will be the dominant operating system, and others where Android will be. And I've seen websites neglect testing for one or the other, and it turns out that the one that they didn't test with was the one that they had most of their users come from. So really, there are many, many different segments that you should definitely look into.
Cool. I'm going to also pull again from the live chat. BCPRAUX asks, how does healthcare industry benefit from GA? Can you share some simple examples? And I think, Hadley, you'd be great to answer that question.
Yeah, so healthcare industry benefits similarly to any other. The only main restriction that we have is around audiences and audience remarketing because of privacy constraints, and that is a Google policy. However, when we think about our healthcare, like our hospital systems, they can still utilize GA in a number of ways. So if you're, and this all kind of comes back to your overall goals in your measurement strategy, but what we can do, for example, if you have on your site a opportunity for somebody to search based on zip code for a hospital near them, what you could do is set that up as a custom dimension, and then you could capture that field of zip code, and that now becomes basically a dimension in your reports that you can use, so that you can see the number of users, sessions, time on site for users that searched for that zip code. You could also do things like, if your ultimate action, for example, we've seen with a lot of more lead generation type businesses, is submitting a form, and then the actual, let's say the actual appointment or the procedure happens offline. You can capture all that information in the fields online, and the form submit may actually be your ultimate conversion action. And then if you want to get really sophisticated, sometimes you can actually, not sometimes, most of the time, you are actually able to import that data back into Google Analytics and kind of close the loop on the overall transaction. So you can get a full picture of, the user came to my site, they completed a lead form for, say, like dental implants, they actually went to a center, got the procedure done, and now we have all that data in Google Analytics, and we know what device that user was using, where they came from, and a wealth of other information, so that we can use that to find other similar audiences. If we can't necessarily remarket to them because of privacy constraints, we can still use that to find similar audiences through machine learning and everything. So there's really a lot that you can do and get pretty sophisticated, but I hope that helps answer the question, but just feel free to chime in on the comments if there's something else.
Thanks. And then I think we have one more question for you, maybe two more questions here. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to ask now. If we don't get to them, we will send out some follow-up answers. So for Hadley again, are there any recommendations how to notify users about analytics gathering and the options of opting out? So a user on your site doesn't want you to take analytics on them. What are the options here? Yeah,
so when a user lands on your site, you can have the pop-up notification around cookie collection. And the pop-up can now also have another section where you can give users the choice to see all the tools or tags collecting data. And from there, they can then choose to opt out of Google Analytics. And our developer tool guides have a great section on opting out if you want to get into more details, but there's definitely that choice now, so that we can provide users with that level of transparency.
Cool. And then the last question is, what is the best way to orchestrate A/B tests? And it has a couple options here with the roadmap, who should be in charge, all of that. So I will take that one, and I'm going to recommend that you tune in next week, because this is our A/B testing part. I think it's going to be an awesome session. I think we're going to get a little bit into Google Optimize, and then also some strategies on how to A/B test. So hopefully you can join then. It looks like there's no more questions in the live stream. So thank you, everyone. This was an awesome session. Thank you, Hadley and Kat, for being our great speakers. And hopefully we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.